Let's now talk about domain events. Domain events are used to capture an occurrence of something that happened in the domain. The occurrence of such events is propagated to other parties which are notified about their occurrence. When events are delivered to interested parties in either local or foreign systems, they are generally used to facilitate eventual consistency. We must pay attention when talking with domain experts to find any clues of the need of domain events. There will be probably times when the spoken language of the experts doesn't lead to a clear reason to model an event. Yet, the business situation may still call for it. Domain experts may or may not be aware of this kind of requirements, and they could become known only as a result of cross-team discussions. This tends to happen when events must be broadcasted to external services, where the system in your enterprise have been decoupled and occurrences throughout the domain must be communicated across bounded contexts. Events like these get published and subscribers are notified. As such events are handled by subscribers, they may have far-reaching impact on local and remote bounded contexts. Another interesting aspect of domain events is that they can be used to model information about activity in the domain as a series of discrete events. This is different to inferring state from the entities or having an audit trail, and it is the essence of event sourcing. Before moving to a concrete example in our code, let's talk about some implementation rules of domain events. The first thing to notice is that domain events should be implemented as immutable objects. Domain events are part of the domain model and a representation of something that happened in the domain. When modeling events, name them and their properties according to the ubiquitous language in the bounded context where they originate. If an event is the result of executing a command operation on an aggregate, the name is usually derived from the command that was executed. The command is the cause of the event, and hence the event's name is rightly stated in terms of the command having occurred in the past. Consider including whatever would be necessary to trigger the event again. This normally includes the identity of the aggregate instance on which it took place, or any aggregate instances involved. Using this guidance, we might create properties of any parameters that caused the event, if discussion proves they are useful. It's also possible that some resulting aggregate state transition values could be helpful to subscribers. There are times when a domain event can be enriched with additional data. This can be especially helpful to consumers that don't want to query back on your bounded context to obtain additional data that they need. Even so, you must be careful not to fill up the domain event with so much data that it loses its meaning. Avoid exposing the domain model to any kind of middleware messaging infrastructure. Those kinds of components live only in the infrastructure, and while the domain model might at times use such infrastructure indirectly, it would never explicitly couple to it. Bear in mind that the events could be handled in the same bounded context or could be propagated beyond the boundaries of our application through the usage of messaging infrastructure. Let's look at an example implementation of a domain event in our code. In this case, during the checkout process, we implemented a domain service in which, after performing some validations on the cart, we are generating a purchase order which is saved, and after saving this purchase order, we are publishing an event signaling this event. We are leveraging, in this case, the usage of Application Event Publisher from Spring Framework in order to publish this kind of events. You can read more about it in the documentation of Spring. When it comes to handling the event, here we're using Transactional Event Listener, which is also provided by Spring, and in this case we are simply generating an email message out of the purchase order and sending it to the customer that originated it.